Welcome to part 2 of week 0 of the massive brain versus the big ass coin. In part 1, I explained the bet between my big ass coin and my friend's massive football brain. If you haven't seen that video, you may want to check it out before proceeding with this technical summary. The purpose of this summary is to walk through the statistical calculations and probability claims that I made in part 1 and to prove my claim that I have an 85% probability of walking away with the prize money of $40 US. All the calculations in this challenge are based on the binomial probability theorem, which is summarized in this formula. In its generic form, this formula states that the probability of success, where success is defined as the occurrence you are testing for, is a function of three variables: n, which equals the number of trials, k, the number of successes desired, and p, the probability of success for any one trial. I'm not going to pause here because you can do that for yourself. However, I will run through a quick example to show you what you are capable of doing with this formula. Let's say we're going to toss a coin 10 times, and we want to know the probability of getting heads 3 times. Intuitively, we know we should expect to get heads somewhere between 4 and 6 times, usually 5. But we don't really know what the exact odds of that are, and we certainly don't know the exact odds of getting 3 heads. But the binomial theorem does, and it tells us that the odds of getting 3 heads out of 10 is approximately 11.7%. I say approximately because there's a lot more decimal places after that. But if you use the variables shown on this screen and you crunch through this formula, you will get this answer. In fact, if you crunched all the possibilities, all the way from getting, say, 0 heads to 10 heads, you would get a probability distribution that looks like this. Each bar in this histogram represents the probability on the y-axis of getting the number of heads, which is shown on the x-axis, for each possibility between 0 and 10. And we can see that the probability distribution is normally distributed around getting 5 out of 10 heads, which makes sense for 2 reasons. First, your most likely result would be to get 5 out of 10 heads, which explains why the graph peaks there. And second, it is symmetrical around 5 because what is true for heads is also true for tails. That is to say, the probability of tossing 3 heads should be, and is, the same as the probability of tossing 3 tails. And since 3 tails is the same thing as 7 heads, we can see that the highlighted red bars, which represent 3 and 7 heads, do in fact have the same probability. Okay, enough background. Let's dive into the massive brain versus the big ass coin debate. The first step is to simplify the schedule. The NFL, in its infinite wisdom, does not evenly divide its schedule into 16 weeks of 16 games. They have 17 weeks, where most weeks have 16 games, but some have 14 and others have 13. Since the contest is 17 weeks long, I chose to simplify the calculations by assuming a 17-week schedule of 15 games each. It's not exact, but trust me, I do love you, and it is close enough. The second step is to determine the probability of a tie week. If you remember from the definition of this contest that ties go to the big ass coin, then it is necessary to estimate the probability that any given week will end in a tie. And the way we do that is to use the binomial theorem to calculate the probability of either player winning 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way through 15 games, which you can see on the histogram on the right. We then multiply each player's probability of winning the same number of games in a given week. For example, the odds of either player winning 8 games is about 20%. So the odds of both players winning 8 games is 20% times 20%, which equals 4%. If we then summed all these products across all tie possibilities, we get about 14%. That means in any given week, there is about a 14% chance that the massive brain and the big ass coin will pick the same number of winners. We now have enough information to define the three variables to compute the probability of the overall contest. From the big ass coin's point of view, the probability, P, of a success, that is to say winning a given week, is 57%. We get that value by subtracting the 14% predicted ties from 100%, leaving 86% of weeks that will have a winner. Half of 86% is 43%. Then add the 14% ties to that, and you get 57%. Next, the number of trials, N, is the 17 weeks of the regular season. And last, the number of desired successes, K, is 8, because if I win 8 or more weeks, that leaves less than 10 for the massive brain. At this point, I would like to point out that the website that I found that has a free binomial calculator that I used, which saved me from having to grind out the calculation. You can see it on the presentation, and I encourage you to try it out for yourself. Okay, with these values, we are now ready to compute my odds of winning this bet. On the histogram on the left is the overall distribution of the big ass coin winning every combination of weeks from 0 through 17. As you can see from the graph, the odds of winning less than 4 weeks or more than 15 weeks are so low that they don't even show up on the chart. But the most probable scenario is that I will win 10 of the 17 weeks. And since I only need to win 8 weeks to win the overall contest, if we sum the probabilities of winning 8, 9, 10, etc. through 17, the total probability of winning the $40 is slightly more than 85%. And this figure is backed up by the binomial probability calculator, which shows the exact figure to be 85.81%. So 86% probability sounds pretty good to me. In fact, maybe the question isn't if I'll win, but when. And if we look at it that way, then maybe a more interesting bet is the over-under for when I'll win. Again, using the binomial calculator, we can determine the over-under by lowering the number of weeks until my probability reaches 50%. And we can see from this slide that that point occurs at 13 weeks, which means that 13 weeks is the over-under for this contest. Which is why I can confidently state that I think this contest will be over in favor of the big ass coin by the 15th week. Well, that wraps it up for the technical summary. All that is left is to play the season and see how it goes. But remember, I still need more big ass coins, so send in your challenge coins to the address behind the Show More hotspot below this video. Thank you.